Good morning. I'm going to be a few minutes early today. I got some guys coming to load up. I'll be here pretty quick, so the next few days yet could be a little bit unscheduled times. But we look at chapter 10, verses 1 through 23 this morning. And this is Peter is in Joppa, staying there with this Simon the tanner. And while he's there in another community in Caesarea, there's a man named Cornelius. He is a centurion of the Italian cohort. So he is a soldier, one who is, a leader. He's not just one of the common everyday rank and file, but he is one of the leaders. And he has a vision. It says he's a devout man from God, and he prays all of his household. He gives alms, so he supports the work of the church and the mission of the church, and he prays constantly to God. So, he's one that doesn't forget to have conversations with God. And I think when they say he prays to God constantly, doesn't mean every second, but that he is, faithful in his prayer life. And then it says, one afternoon about 3, he has a vision where he sees an angel of God coming and speaking to him, and he's terrified. He says, what is it, Lord? And, well, your prayers have been answered. And he says, I want you to send men to Joppa for a certain Simon who is called Peter, who's staying with Simon the tanner, and ask him to come, here. And it's very specific. It says, Simon the tanner, his house is by the seaside. This is pretty clear instructions as to where to go and how to find him. So in the middle of his terror, Cornelius hears this word, and he takes 2 of the servants of his household and one of his trusted, a devout soldier from the ranks who served him. He told them everything, and he sent them off to Joppa. And as they were journeying, Peter has a vision. And, in the Jewish tradition, in the Jewish faith, there are certain foods, certain animals that they cannot eat the meat of. A hog is one of them because of its hoof. So anything with a hoof like a hog they can't eat. A cow they can, a sheep they can, but there's a difference in some of these things. And so, but Peter sees this vision, and there's a sheet coming down from heaven, and it says, with all kinds of 4-footed creatures and reptiles and birds of the air. There were very specific animals, birds, reptiles that they could not eat. Fish, you name it. They boom, boom, boom. It was laid right out. And here on this sheet were many of these things, that as far as Peter was concerned, if he was to eat them, he would be unclean. He wouldn't be able to go to the temple. He would, that would be a great sin, almost unforgivable sin. But he hears a voice that says, get up, Peter, kill and eat. And Peter says, no, Lord, I can't eat this stuff. I've been faithful. I can't do that. I've never eaten anything that's profane or unclean. And the voice comes again and says, Peter, well, he doesn't say Peter, but it's just kind of, listen up now. But what God has made clean, you must not call profane. And this happened 3 times. Think about, anytime you hear something 2 times, it's important. When it's the 3rd time, you know that it's something that you should listen to, that you better listen to. And so 3 times this happens, and suddenly the whole sheet and everything in his vision disappears back up into heaven. And as his vision was happening, and he was puzzling over what to make of this, these men from Joppa, or the men from Caesarea came rather to Joppa, to the house, and they were asking for Simon's house, and they were standing by the gate, and Peter comes downstairs and says, I'm looking. I'm the one. Because a voice has come to him and said, hey, there's 3 guys at the gate. They're looking for you. God works. In such definite ways here in the Bible. And sometimes today we wish that we would have these clear visions and clear signs from God just as well, But, it's give me a sign. And then when we get a sign, we ignore it, But, So the vision again now comes, and it's 3 men are searching. Get up and go down and go with them, because I have sent them. So Peter knows that these men have come at the will of God. You know, they were sent by God to invite Peter to come and spread the word of Jesus to this man. And so, you know, Peter says, I am the one you're looking for. What is your reason for coming? And they tell him, you know, Cornelius, an upright, God-fearing man who is well spoken of by the whole Jewish nation. So Cornelius isn't a Jew. I mean, he's well spoken of by the whole Jewish nation. He is one of those who looks out for the Jews. He's fair. He's all of that with the Jews. And it says that, you know, they tell him he was directed by a holy angel to send and have you come to his house and to hear what you say. So Peter invited him in. They spent the night, and the next morning they got up and began the journey then to Caesarea. And it says some of the believers from Joppa followed and went with him. So it wasn't just a solitary missionary journey. I mean, there were others that were faithful believers in Jesus that went with Peter. You know, so often when I think about, you know, the missionary journeys of Peter and Paul, you know, in my mind, I vision them just walking all by themselves down the road. But very seldom did it happen that way. I mean, Paul usually had someone with him. Peter had someone with him. And here we have that perfect example of Peter being accompanied by other believers. And I think that that's a good example for us as well. It's a reminder to us that when a situation comes up, you know, rather than try to tackle it alone, I mean, it's always better to have some like minds and get some help and to just, you know, work together that way. And especially within the church. I mean, one person cannot run a church. I mean, and you know, it takes a lot of hands. And if one person gets too much control, or one family gets too much control within the structure of a church, it's often detrimental that way. But working together, and this is one of the examples that we see, you know, especially in the book of Acts, that, you know, God calls Peter, but Peter doesn't go by himself. He's accompanied by other believers. And when we get further on and we start learning about Paul, it's the same thing as what I said earlier, that it's a community effort. And I think that's such an important thing to remember in all of our lives, that if we want our church, our religious organization, if we want the place that we gather for worship, if we want it to continue, we need to work together. And rather than have a bunch of inbiting and backbiting and, you know, gossip going on, we need to just work together for the good of God and for the good of all. And so on your daily journey, may God bless you again today, as he always does. And it's just a reminder from this lesson too, that what God has made, you know, God says, you know, nothing I have made is profane. Nothing I have made is going to corrupt you that way. You know, what God has made clean, you must not call profane. But on the flip side of that, what God says is a sin is still a sin. So blessings again today. We'll see you tomorrow somewhere around the 9 o'clock hour.